we welcome you to the Priscilla R. Tyson Cultural Arts Center for Conversations and Coffee on this 28th day of May, 2026. I'm Ellen O'Shaughnessy, coordinator of the program. We celebrate today our main gallery artist, Nicholas Hill, taking us into the world of the pandemic. With profound perspective, we all gathered here survived the pandemic and are most grateful. We likely know someone who didn't. Truly, Nicholas's pandemic portraits exhibit is an artifact of our times. Nicholas is a printmaker and a painter and a 2017 Guggenheim Fellow. Artist residences play an important role in Nicholas's art practice. He's been granted residencies in the United States at the MacDowell in New Hampshire, the Art Students League of New York, and the Ragdale Foundation. Over 50 collections hold works by Nicholas, including the United States Department of State, the Library of Congress, New York Historical, and the Kathy Kollwitz House in Moritzburg, Germany. Nicholas has been awarded multiple grants by the New York Council on the Arts, the Ohio Arts Council, Casaplan Art Center in Valparaiso, Chile, the city of Dresden, Germany, and Lalit Kala Academy in New Delhi, India. Nicholas has earned the Bachelor of Fine Arts from Michigan State University, from the Honors College, and the MA and Master of Fine Arts from the University of Iowa, where he studied printmaking with Mauricio Lasansky. Nicholas has taught at the State University of New York of Pittsburgh, Union College, Bethany College, and Otterbein University, receiving tenure and chairing of the art department at Bethany College and Otterbein University. Nicholas works full-time in his studio in Granville and has recently led printmaking workshops in Chile and Portugal. Nicholas, thank you for being with us today and sharing your amazing art and the profound perspective that your message of your portraits bring to us. All right.
Thank you, Ellen, and thank you, Matthew. Thanks to Todd Camp. Thanks to you taking a break at noon on a beautiful day. Also, I wanted to say I really feel honored that I get to be the first artist exhibiting in this newly renovated space. I was telling Todd just before we started that I think it's one of the top 5 gallery spaces in Columbus, and so it's exciting to have the work here. I'm going to start by telling you how this project got started and how it took off. There'll be time for you to ask questions if you have any, and if you have a pressing question as I'm talking and you think you might forget it, just raise your hand and I'll answer it right on the spot, okay? In 2020, I was still teaching at Otterbein, and then things changed and teaching moved to exclusively online. I taught a long time, you picked that up from Ellen's long introduction, and I was not about to start teaching online that late in my career. I knew the students would be very disappointed and I would just be frustrated. So I just took an early retirement, and it was fortuitous because then I found myself in my studio all the time. So how did they get started? I love newspapers. I have always loved newspapers. It's not that I am unfamiliar with reading online. I still read a lot of newspapers online, but I like to buy paper. As a printmaker, that may not seem that unusual, but it's not just the paper that attracts me about newspapers. They're designed They are very intentionally designed. The placement of articles, the size of headlines, the placement of photographs, all very intentional. And were you to today buy today's New York Times paper and then look at the same stories online on your iPad or your phone or your computer, they're designed differently. They look different. Stories are there, content's the same, but they look different. And the advantage for me, or the attraction for me to the paper, is on the front page, for example, there might be 6 or 7 articles, and I may be attracted to one particular one. The topic is of interest to me, but upon reading it, my eye absolutely has to travel to whatever else is on that page. So it moves me into different topics, something that isn't the case generally with online reading. We tend to choose what we want to read and ignore other things. That's simply what we do. I do that too. I'm not making a judgment there. I'm just saying that's what happens. So I love newspapers. In January of 2020, I got a bonus. I had, I think something like 18,000 miles on an airline ticket. You know, you collect miles. Well, 18,000 miles would get me absolutely nothing if I wanted to fly. I mean, it would get me nothing. It was worthless. And I knew I wasn't going to fly on that airline anymore anyway. And I received in the mail one of those things you get. You can trade in your miles to get magazine subscriptions or newspaper subscriptions. This is back when people used to want to read these things. So I looked through the list. Usually they're rather obscure, not things I was interested in, such as, cigar aficionado. I wasn't keen to get that, but I had enough miles to get 1-year subscription to the Wall Street Journal. Not a newspaper that I normally look at, but it was newspaper, so I took it. So in January, I started to receive every day, delivered to at the end of our driveway, the Wall Street Journal, and I already had a subscription to the New York Times. So I was getting 2 newspapers every morning, walking down the driveway, bringing them back, and headlines started to appear in January and February about this mysterious illness, unnamed or named, but hard to understand. Lots more questions than answers. I was struck as I look at the front pages of those 2 different newspapers, the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal, by the manner in which they addressed the topic. They tended to be very, how do I want to put it, more objective than subjective, rather impersonal. And there was a stark contrast to the way I was hearing about it on the news, people in hospitals, numbers of people infected. There's a quote that really prompted this too. 1 death is a tragedy, 1 million deaths are a statistic. And so I thought, what can I do? What can I do? Can I do anything? We all felt kind of at sea over the whole epidemic. But because I love newspapers, I just started tearing pages out that were interesting to me, that had a headline, had to have a headline, that related to the pandemic. Initially, in fact, for the first 3,000 drawings, the headline had to occur above the fold. Now, that's sort of an old-fashioned thought, but on a newspaper, a traditional size newspaper is folded. Any headline that's above the fold is more important. It can still be on the front page, but a lower headline isn't as important as an upper headline. So I had this very specific kind of guideline. Headline related to the pandemic had to be above the fold, and it could be any page in the newspaper. So I found myself going through both of these papers each day and tearing out pages that met that criterion. Still didn't know what I was going to do with them, but I love newspapers and these were interesting to me, so I collected them. Around March, I had been thinking a lot about what am I going to do with this constantly growing stack of pages? And I thought, okay, think of that quote again. How can you make this concept of loss more human, more humane, and less numbers-based? So I thought, make portraits of people. Okay, you can make portraits of people. Who? Who do I draw? Do I draw you? Do I get a mirror and just keep drawing myself. So I went back to the newspapers again, because they'd been my source of ideas. And I thought, no, I'm going to find my subjects each day just the way I found my headlines. So I went through the same newspapers beginning in March, and anytime there was a news photograph, I looked at the photograph, and if there were someone in the photograph unintentionally, I tore their picture out. They became one of my subjects. So let's say there's a news photo of these three ladies, and you're the subject because you're the important folks. But everybody else back there, or at least to this point, is in the photograph. So I look back and I'd tear out whatever found, I call them found subjects. And usually they were no larger than a postage stamp, as you might guess. It became problematic at times because I had to have enough visual to see a face. So often there would be people, but there was no information to draw them. So my routine was tear out the pages, the headline pages, and then find these little subjects and make a stack of them. So I had a stack of the found portraits, a stack of the pages. So how do I begin? I pick up one of the portraits, have one of the pages in front of me. In my studio, my table is about this high for drawing. And I would put the page on the table. You're envisioning me doing a drawing now. And I had some stones, and I put a stone on each corner because I was going to be holding the portrait in one hand and my bamboo brush in the other, or the ink pot. So I needed the paper to be secure. It's hard to demonstrate holding a microphone. But so my left hand has the portrait. I'm looking at it, and I'm drawing with bamboo brush and India ink. Now, before I started drawing the portrait, each portrait, you'll notice if you look around, many of them have black horizontal lines. I was redacting, as we say these days. I was eliminating headlines, and in some cases photographs, that distracted from the focus of the pandemic headline. So I began by doing that. Then I had my page, and then I had my randomly found photo. I did not allow myself to sort of sort through these faces and think, oh, that face might look nice on that page. I had to use the faces in the order they were stacked, and I had to use the pieces of newspaper in the order that they were stacked.
Nicholas, could you take us to examples here that you would point out from your descriptions?
Well, I think I'll back up. I won't walk around, I'll back up. Here's an example of redaction. You see that? The word was not me. The word was time, I think. But I saw me. I thought, well, that works with my theme, so I left me. There were things down here that were distracting, so I got rid of them. Does that answer your question?
It's helpful when you point out what you're saying.
Yeah. Everybody following me? Anybody have questions? Okay. Sometimes things aren't redacted, but they're they're brought out because, if you underline something, you bring it out, right? You bring your attention to it. So I vividly remember the first drawing I made. And when you've made over 5,000 drawings in the same process, that's significant to remember the first one. So you know my system. Got my little portrait, got my piece of paper, got my pen, my brush, started drawing, and drew for about 20 minutes, and stopped and thought, how long can you spend on a drawing? I had my system, had to be these pages, had to be these portraits. Is there any requirement, any criterion for how long the drawings can be drawn? Well, I didn't just tear those pages out of the newspaper. I read all the articles. And early in the pandemic, there was a statistic that one American was dying every 5 minutes from COVID-19. Now, that got much worse as time went on. That was not the worst statistic, but it was one that came about early. And obviously, it did not take into account deaths across the world. So often our newspapers in this country talk about the United States as if we live in our own little world. Nonetheless, I had a time now, 5 minutes. So I thought, okay, I may not spend more than 5 minutes on a drawing, maximum 5 minutes. That was very helpful. And when I started with that time limitation, I had a 3-minute egg timer, those little hourglass. And so, I'd be drawing, see they went through, flip it over. But I only had to do that a couple times, and I had a good sense of what 5 minutes was. Also, many of these drawings were done in much less than 5 minutes. I would say the average length was 3 or 3.5 minutes. Because keep in mind, this little picture, this little portrait, was very small. And another challenge that I encountered early on in finding my passers-by, my subjects, was that as the pandemic progressed, many of those people in the background had masks on. So I have a little drawing or a little photograph of a person, and what I have is their eyes. Sometimes they were larger and I could use them, but one of the reasons you don't see many masked faces is there simply wasn't enough information to use them as a subject. Something, as I'm talking about what isn't here, I'll also mention that there are probably, several hundred drawings that aren't included in that total that I gave you, 5,300, because I got carried away when I was drawing, because I was focusing on the portrait, and inadvertently, I would paint over the headline. So I lost my headline. And so they were meaningless. I had to have the portrait, I had to have the headline, and it had to happen in 5 minutes or less. So these were rules I gave myself. Sometimes I do that with different projects. I'm not as specific as that, but I find that limiting options really forces one to be creative. If you say you can do whatever you want, that can sometimes be staggering. Yes?
Is your first drawing on display?
It is not, but thank you for asking that question because it brings up another point. If you've not looked around...
Repeat the question.
Oh, the question was, is your first drawing from the series on display? And the answer is no. And I don't even know which one was the first one, but I could find out. And because if you look closely at these drawings, in the lower right-hand corner, there's a red number, a number written with red colored pencil. Each time I finished a drawing, I numbered it. And so when you look around, if you've not done that yet, you might just glance and see that there are drawings from 2,500 and 400, and that one's 650, all over the place. They're not up in chronological order at all, and but they go across the scheme of all the drawings that were done. Okay.
For example, tell us about the doctors here, who are the
Doctors
first
are COVID's-
historians from telling the story, this theme. COVID's first historians are the doctors. And then the image that you have before us. Tell us about that one.
Well, I think you're describing what you're seeing. I mean, there's nothing new to tell you, but what I will say as you bring up the subject, Ellen, is that these 3 pieces and the 3 behind you are not newspaper. These are archival prints. That is, they will live forever if they're properly cared for. Unlike newspaper, the newspaper is fugitive. We all know that. It turns yellow, it gets wrinkled, it gets cracked, it's gone. In my mind, the reality of what will happen to these drawings, again, is consistent with the whole concept. They're fugitive. Life is fugitive. Our response and our memories are fugitive. And I think if you look around, as Ellen has commented on a particular headline, if you look around, you're going to be taken back in time by the headlines. And I was walking around for 20 minutes before you came in, and I'm always surprised when I read the headlines again, because they ricochet over so many different topics over a 5-year period. Yes.
Yeah, a lot of times you read the headlines and then you ask somebody a week later what was on the headlines, they can't remember.
Yeah, right.
It's like, yeah, that was a big headline a week ago, but now you can't remember what happened.
Yeah.
It's, in the psyche, it's just disappeared.
You're right. Yeah. Yeah. So exactly. My point about these 6 archival prints is that this was the product of a collaboration that came about just by chance. A friend of mine directs a program with physicians in Columbus through the Columbus Medical Foundation, and it's called the Physicians Leadership. It's an A association, we'll say. They meet once a month. Physicians choose to be in this group, and it's a way to help them deal with the challenges that physicians deal with among themselves. Well, I was asked by one of the leaders, could they borrow some of the drawings and have them pin them up at their meeting and just use them as a point of departure to discuss their experiences, doctors' experiences during COVID. I said, sure. So I loaned them 50 drawings, easy to do, and that was that. Well, then I got a call just the day before the session with the physicians, and I was asked, the sessions themselves were 3 hours long. And then at the end, they had a 20-minute sort of debriefing period. Would I be willing to come to the debriefing period just to hear or answer questions that they might have about the drawings, or to hear what they had to say? I said, that would be interesting. I'd love to do that. So I did. And it was fun. There were about 20 physicians, different ages, and they were sitting around in a circle on the floor on cushions, which not something I would have expected coming into a group of physicians, and they were in the midst of talking anyway. I just sort of came in, and I was introduced, and then they just kept talking, and they would point to drawings around the room. One person might point to a drawing and then tell a story about her or his experience. Well, I remember one of the physicians was an emergency room doctor, and she said, it was like war. It was like MASH. I had to say this person is gone, and that was it, and I had to move to someone else. She said it was just so unlike anything I've ever done in my life. There were other stories like that, physicians grappling as human beings with what they had to deal with. When they finished, I said, and this was spontaneous, because each of them had chosen particular drawings to make their point. I said, if you're interested, please take the drawing with you. If that drawing is meaningful to you, please take it with you. And any of them did. And then I didn't know this, but there was a second session the next night. And so I said to the leader, if people are interested, let them take the drawings. So I think I gave away, I don't know, 30 drawings. I don't remember. But I felt really good about it because these people really connected with them. And I mean, it was an act to do with these heroes who were. So after that happened, I thought, how can these drawings last longer and be in situations or locations that might connect with people? And I thought, well, clinics, doctors' offices, hospitals. So I connected again with the same group, and I said, if I were to bring a couple hundred drawings in, and I'll do some editing, that I think each of the drawings has some reference to healthcare or that sort of thing, would some of the doctors or nurses choose a half dozen of them, and I will make them into archival digital prints in small editions. So an edition is a group of like prints. So each of these 6, those 3 and those 3, are printed in editions of 10 each, and currently they're all over Columbus. You might even see them. There's some at St. Anne's Hospital, several physicians' private offices and clinics. My one requirement was they had to be hung in a space where the public could see them and the healthcare workers could see them. Ohio State has a whole bunch of them too. So they're all over the place. You may come upon them. And that was a really fun project that really just evolved. It wasn't anything that I'd planned. It just happened.
Nicholas, could you take us to these wonderful images that you have here? We'll just turn our chairs and
Okay.
face you.
Okay,
Okay?
sure.
Yeah. Go up to them.
I'm waiting for, who goes first? What do you want everyone to do, Ellen? Explain to
Well,
the,
to go up to those images and tell us about them.
no,
They're
I'm asking what you want
amazing.
the audience to do. Are we staying put or are we
We're
moving?
just going to move our chairs so we
Okay.
can see you.
So Ellen wants you to pick up your chair and come over
Well,
here.
not necessarily pick up the chair, just move it towards you.
Well, demonstrate it, Ellen. Show us what you're talking about.
How about this? Great.
Yes.
Feelings and emotions out of our prints or
Drawings.
drawings. You know, it's just a lot of emotions into the faces that we do.
Thank you. It was a comment, not a question. The gentleman said he gets a lot of emotion.
You know, like the lady right up there on the corner, you did a beautiful job. It gives a certain feeling, and then the lady or the guy at the other corner, right down there, it gives a whole nother, feeling. And then over on that side, you got the color one, the color face over there. And then on the corner over there was the guy, looks like something happened to his brain. It's a lot of really, really emotional,
Thank you.
heart stuff that really get into the psyche.
Great, thank you. Would you pass the back? Okay, thank you, thanks. Thank you.
If you worked for 3 minutes or 5 minutes, would you do one a day, or would you like decompress and do another one later?
Thanks for asking that question. I did as many as I had pages and portraits for. Now, it wasn't always equal. There were days I did 30. I think the largest number was 40. I didn't stop and start. Once I'd gathered things and placed them where they went, I methodically went through making the drawings, putting them on the floor, making another one, putting on the floor. I never looked back at them. I never allowed myself, even after I was done with them, once they were dry, they were stacked and put away. So I did not allow myself to go back. And there were a couple reasons for that. As an artist, it's really easy to try to make something, to design something, or to use a particular interpretation. And I didn't want them to become stylized. I wanted them to be immediate. And so that was one way to you can't learn from them by going back to them. You have to move forward. Now, there were days that I might have had, say, 10 pages and 6 portraits. So I could only do 6 portraits. But, I kept the residual pages for the next time. And it was important that was the first thing I did in the day. My day began by getting the newspapers. Actually, my day began by walking 5 miles, getting the newspapers, finding the things in them, and drawing in silence. I usually work in silence. I use music sometimes, but these had to be done in silence. I'm going to say this next thing because I'm afraid I'm going to forget if I don't say it now. If you would like to see me making a drawing, it's not happening here, but you can go to the Pandemic Portraits by Nicholas Hill on YouTube, and there's like a 3-minute bit that it talks about the project, but then it shows me making a drawing. It's out of date because it'll say 3,500 drawings. Well, there are more than that, but when the video was made, it was accurate. Did it answer your question? Okay, so what I'd like to do now, you've been a great role model here. Does anyone want to point to a particular drawing? Let's let somebody else do it, and say why you think that's interesting.
Want to use the microphone here?
That one is interesting.
Oh, that one, okay. Can you say why?
It's really a mind of myself.
I think a lot of people who've responded to the work, and people usually have some response. It's not always positive, but people who respond to the work think about personal experiences. And again, I think it's a combination of both maybe the text and the image pulling you back in time. Other people who haven't commented on drawings want to point one out? You don't have to get up. Yes. On the upper left, yeah. Can you say why?
I just like the color.
Let me say something about color. So in the New York Times, Sunday, if you get the Times, there's more color. There just are more pages that have color in them. And I know that because long before I did this project, I would save pages, had nothing to do with anything other than their color. So my eye was looking for color. And then when there was color that also used the topic of the pandemic, it was a great combination. And so I agree, I think the color is strong in that. And if you look at the way they're installed, I want to say a little thing about the installation of the work. I had said before, this is a fantastic space. It's really an exciting space, and I'm really pleased to be showing here. I had a plan when I brought the drawings in, but the plan was not as expansive as this. I was going to have two bands of drawings instead of 3. I had completed this wall, and I would be walking around the room looking at things, and I thought, it's not enough. So I took that wall down, came back the next day, and did this 3-band solution, which for me, I think the space is great for seeing things from a distance, but also it's almost billboard-like. At the same time, I didn't want to cover the walls because I think the blank spaces are important pauses to think, to reflect, maybe have some thoughts of your own about the work.
I'm sorry. I like what you had said about the wall is because to me, where I am sitting and looking at all the pictures on that wall with the white background, it looks like they're all trying to put together like one story. And how I know that is because I wrote my own.
That's really insightful. I think, and it's a...
Do you want to repeat that for us?
I'll summarize it by saying the way all the drawings are placed together tends to tell a single story. And I agree that it does. That's a good comment. Yes.
The green one in the middle, it looks like somebody's in prison and you got the things. Can you talk about that one?
No, I can say it's not that directive. You heard his reference to prison. I wasn't thinking that at all. Here's an example of one of those wonderful, strong color pages. And it's counting, right? We are counting the days is the text. We are counting the days. So that's what I saved. We are counting the days. I redacted. The guy has lots of black hair because I didn't want you to read what was up there. So let's go to another wall. Come close. It can be interesting to get close to the drawings, having been so far away from them. I wanted to say something about, based on your last comment about coming together. Each of the drawings was obviously made individually. In installing the work, I came up with the idea 2 or 3 exhibitions ago. I've done several exhibitions, iterations of this. I came up with the idea of creating these bands so that they weren't always just single drawings. And I used the number 5. It's an odd number, and I like the dimensions of the band. And then when I saw putting 1, 2, or 3 bands together, this is all formal, this is all organizational visual information. But when I put the three bands together, then they become this very large portrait. Then the question became, what 5 drawings do you put together? So I would take, I call them bales. I would take a stack of drawings. I have a lot. And I'd put them on my drawing table, and I'd have 4 categories. And the categories were no, because there are a lot of drawings that I wouldn't want to show. That was easy. That often was a very high stack. Left-looking, central-looking, right-looking. You see? And sometimes then sort of looking in that direction and looking absolutely in that direction. I didn't want it to seem too obvious, but I wanted to create a way to bring them together. So your observation about seeing them as a group is very astute. That's a really good observation.
I like that one where it says you on it, because how the noses and the body, it kind of reminds me of the witch on Snow White.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there's a graphic quality to it, isn't there? As you talk about the word in the image, you'll see a lot of these images where the words really become part of the face. That's a good example, isn't it? I mean, it's not just the words and the face. The words are incorporated. Something I did also that I found happening was I tried to keep the dates. But just as I got rid of headlines sometimes, because I was so carried away with my drawings, I lost dates sometimes too. So early on, probably in the first 1,000, I would pencil in the date to try to remember it. And also early on, I kept them in chronological order. That's history. It would take me a very long time to sort them out. And now I'll admit something that I haven't told many people. I have 300 plus drawings that I have yet to number. Talked about the numbers. So they're carefully stacked in the order that they were done, but I got lazy and just didn't want to number them. If you look at that video that I mentioned about the pandemic portraits, there's a scene or a little image, and it shows some of my used up bamboo brushes. You know, just there's like one hair left in the brush. And it shows little nubs of red colored pencils. I kept sharpening them, they got shorter, shorter, shorter. And it also said, I think, I used 8 quarts of ink. I've used, many, many more than that. Anybody else have questions? Yes.
Right there in yellow. Is that already sold or what?
Let's come around and look. You can stay there. This one?
Yeah.
And the question, is it
Sold?
Is it?
Sold?
No, it's not sold because I don't sell them. I don't mean to be glib. I'm an artist and I sell my work, but this project is quite different. And I've already told you I gave away 50 drawings to physicians, and I was happy to do that. It brings up the subject of the future of the drawings, for sure. If you'd like to. Sorry to have everybody move. The idea of, I don't know where cameras are, the idea of selling them just isn't part of the scheme for me. Anybody want to make comments at all about anything or questions? Or as you're all walking around, maybe there's a drawing you want to be closer to, or?
I was wondering what happens.
I did all of them. Yeah.
How long did it take you to do one?
Less than 5 minutes per drawing. Yeah.
Yes, that's what I was wondering. And when you add color, for example, up in this one, what happens in you when you go from this?
Well, nothing happened to me, but it's an illustration of the fact of why it's really interesting on those usually Sunday newspaper pages when there is a splash of color. I mean, as much as I did not try to orchestrate things, I've told you my criteria in trying to follow a routine, I am an artist. So if I had a page that had color, it became, kind of an interesting opportunity.
For color to express the feeling.
Well, it's there. Color will do what it will do. Obviously, I'm working in this very graphic way. I've told you I'm a printmaker. And in studying printmaking, and Ellen even mentioned the printmaker with whom I studied in graduate school. His name was Mauricio Lasansky, and he was an internationally known printmaker, originally from Argentina. And he this is just his life, he is credited with creating the first Master of Fine Arts degree in printmaking in the United States. And programs spread from Iowa because he trained hundreds of people who set up similar programs at other universities. So that's the background. He was a very powerful influence on people. When one took printmaking with him, as a graduate student, one was not allowed to use color inks until Monsieur Lasansky said you were ready to use color. So I knew people, it was a 3-year Master of Fine Arts degree. I knew people who never were given permission. Thankfully, I did get permission, but it was the way it was done. So I say all of that to say black and white are color. That was the lesson that he taught. If you can't achieve a sense of intensity and value with black and white, you're just going to use color to hide something you haven't done properly. It was quite clear. And it was a great lesson. And to this day, when I'm making etchings, which is the technique that I learned from him, I resolve a plate. I finish etching it, get it all done in black and white before I even think about using color. Were you to see most of my prints, they're in color, but they're resolved in black and white.
When you're making these drawings, are you replicating the picture that's in the newspaper?
I am doing my best. I have 5 minutes. I'm looking at an expression. Each of them the people have an expression, and probably if I didn't keep any of those little portraits, by the way, they're gone. But were I to have kept them, let's say this is an interesting idea. What if I had a little basket here, and I kept the little portraits and put them in the basket, and maybe put in a few that weren't here to make it fun? I think you'd be able to match most of them. Not that they were exactly alike, but you'd catch the expression. In many ways, these are what I would call gestural drawings. They're very immediate. They're what I'd also call essential drawings. There's no time for excess. What's essential to capture the portrait?
The way you've used color here and my COVID summer day, when we got outside after the intensity of being inside, that's wonderful. I love that. It's one of my favorite.
Oh, great, yeah.
What was that like for you on that summer day?
Oh, Ellen, you've asked this question in 2 or 3 different ways, and it's not that I'm trying to avoid it, but I think to try to give everyone a clear sense of the process, I did not allow myself to interpret or react. I wasn't reacting, I was acting. You can't act and react. As an artist, you act. Later you react, or other people react, but making art is action.
So your sentiment of feeling was not really part of
I'm
the
not
art.
saying that. I'm not saying there was no expression in what I was doing. I'm saying I didn't do what you just asked. I did not interpret. I did not react.
Okay.
It's very different.
Yep.
You picked a
everything random, so he didn't say, this picture looks good on here. He took what was there and he just put it on there without looking at the content, other than to redact stuff.
Yeah, here's something else. I will say one thing about this drawing, because it's similar to that one in terms of scale. If you look at the portraits, generally, most of them are about life size or a little bit larger. Sometimes they're smaller, but they don't work as well if they're smaller, quite frankly. Those two on either end are much larger than life. And you know, it was a decision that came about, I don't know how, it just came about. But all that wonderful yellow and all of those fill in the blanks, I mean, the combination of the text and the color, I had that portrait. I didn't need a lot of marks for the portrait, and it worked. Now, I could have done what I just said and maybe overworked the drawing. Lot more black. I would have lost things, and that happened. The important thing to keep in mind is there are hundreds of drawings that got thrown away. They were overdrawn. So, you know, you're seeing approximately 200 drawings out of approximately 5,300 drawings, not counting the several hundred that are in the trash. You know,
When did you learn to stop, you know, and not overdo it?
well, as I
It's
said,
like
yeah.
This one down there is beautiful. It's like the simple art, and it brings it out, but if you went more detailed, it would ruin it.
I agree. And I had that limit of 5 minutes. This probably was a 2-minute drawing.
And then the guy in the middle, right up there, really speaks to me. Right there was the hat.
Oh, the blue.
You know, you got the city background, this and that, and the color and the sunset. How do you look at the newspaper and figure out what you're going to be doing?
I react to the page, and then I take action.
It's feelings and emotions.
No, it's not feelings and emotions. It's
Yeah?
visual response to an image.
Okay. Hey, that's good.
See,
Yeah.
and as you
I need to say something more. I'm not trying to be oblique. I'm trying to be honest, and because these drawings were done in such a short amount of time, to assume that I could respond to the subject matter on so many levels in that short amount of time and analyze it. I mean, the questions really have addressed the concept of analysis, and that's later. The making is first, and each of us is human, and we come to our creative process with who we are. So that we don't live without expression in us, but neither do we impose. We find it, I believe. I'm sharing my beliefs. You can disagree with me, that's fine. But I think we find things when we're focused. And this is a very focused process. You know, it's easy to think, oh, wow, 5 minutes, sort of no big deal. But it was a very intense period of time, each of them, yes.
And your 5-minute terminology here would not allow you to do anything more than what you're doing.
Right, and I agree, and it was such a great, lucky criterion for me, because it would be very easy to overwork things, overdraw, yeah. There's a question. Where do you keep them? Okay, so I kept them in my studio for the longest time, and they piled up along the wall. And then the pile started falling over. So fortunately, in our house, we used to have a living room. It's now my study. And in my study, I have a table that's 8 feet long and 3 feet high, and several thousand of them are stacked underneath that table. I also have in the same room a long, higher work table, and underneath there are several thousand of them. They're all underneath those 2 tables, and it's hard to imagine that many drawings that way, but I've told people as they settle on top of each other, it's a bit like when you rake leaves and you have a big pile of leaves and then they just sort of flatten down. That's what happens with these drawings. Then you add more, yeah.
Is that the same thing? Or did you just draw it?
Oh, the one with the mask, the subject had a mask. He was wearing, the photo had a mask. As I said earlier, that many times, if those little photographs, the person was wearing a mask, I couldn't really see enough to do a portrait. But sometimes they were larger, and in that case, I could see enough to do the face. Thanks for asking about where do you keep them. I've wondered about that. Are we all set?
There's something ironic about the mask being rather artistic. This one and that one.
Talk about
Yes,
that more.
an expression of art.
Point out what makes it artistic.
Well, it's this one. And we never had a really positive attitude toward masks except to preserve ourselves from getting COVID. But looking at that, what happened in you as you did that?
Anybody want to answer that question? Yeah, thank you very much.
Over there, too.
Oh.
Huh?
It wasn't necessarily a project in incorporating your emotions into it. It was a project of this face goes on this paper. And the paper type, I mean, you decided it was a COVID thing, so the paper is all related to COVID, and the people were in pictures, and you just didn't think about it. I mean, that was for later.
You can be my spokesperson. Yeah. Any other questions?
In some of these, the lines of type look like the lines in a woodcut if you're back at a distance.
Yeah. Well, one of the reasons that I settled upon bamboo brushes is the range of mark you can get with a single brush. And that brings up another point. When I started, I had an array of brushes. That first drawing that I spent 20 minutes on, I had a whole array of brushes. And so I needed 4 or 5 brushes to get different kinds of marks. And then I thought, well, stick to the bamboo brush, and you can get really fat marks, very thin marks. The language of the brush is so extensive and economical that was the appropriate tool. I think we're done.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for taking us on your journey. It was amazing.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Uh-huh.
Thanks. Thank you.